So I will try to explain the planting system here without spending too much time monologuing, but there's a lot of aspects to this project, and I'll try to at least cover the bases a little bit. So this is a design for Vite maritata, which is the married grape. So you are growing a grapevine on a tree as a support. And you can read about Vite maritata. There's a lot of resources online. It was invented more or less by the Etruscans before the Romans, and more or less it was used in areas that were a little bit more challenging to grow grapes than on the Greek system, which was a low trellis on dead posts. Here you have a higher trellis. It was used in a lot of areas in Campania, Milan, southern Switzerland, some areas in France, other parts of Europe. And the growing the vine on the tree confers a lot of benefits. You can have the you can have the grape bear fruit higher off the ground and evade a lot of pests and diseases that way. And then the pruning of the tree and the grape at the same time in the dormant season confers a lot of vigor to the system. Anyway, we can talk more about the benefits later on, but the design is what I would like to focus on now. So first, siting the field is more just based on what I have than what is ideal. So to the south, my parents' new house, which is wonderful. And I cleared a lot of trees to the east. This was all wooded before. And if you can tell, we're on a gentle north slope. So it's about 4% northern aspect, which is not ideal. It would be nice to have a southern aspect and a little bit of western exposure, but that's not what I have for the grapes. So yeah, not ideal, but that's what's happening. The soil here is a gravelly loam, and it was tilled in conventional vegetables for about 100 years. So we have to do some soil reparation, repairing. So anyway, as far as the design, there are 5 rows in the field. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And most of them have 4 meters between the rows, although these 2 have a little bit less because of circumstances. And there are 2 meters in between trees. So the trees are already mostly planted. Here's one, here's the next. Those are poplar trees. I've also tried, or am trying, there are some willows, hybrid willows, and then this row will be sycamore, which is not something that they had in Europe, so we'll try that one. I grew the trees, so we'll see how it works. And then over in the other half, so this is the half that's going to look like a vineyard. Straight rows, tight spacing of vines. This one is the hybrid willow row. And this half, where I cleared, it was too rocky for them to till, but it's the same soil. And grapes can grow happily on rocky soil. So this area was a lot of early secondary trees, so black locust, most of which I felled. There was dying ash trees from the emerald ash borer, and there were a lot of elm in the understory growing up. So I mostly left the elm, and the elm are going to be support trees as well, and there's some maple. So elm and maple are other ones that they used extensively for the system. And here I'll have 1 row, and then these will be a little bit, as you can see, I kind of got lucky clearing down here. There'll be another row, and I left this tree, left that one, left that one, left that one, left that one. And that was just random, just happened to be in a row. So then I'll continue that on to the south. And the very steep part of the slope I will not plant because it's just too steep. So I'll have a row down there, a row up here, and then 2 or 3 more rows through this stuff that are a little bit less less formal rows, because on this side I will allow the vines to go in the north-south direction and in the east-west direction, and I'm going to have a sort of overhead canopy. So that was another way that they did it. You can see here I seeded, after I did a lot of the felling and clearing, I seeded rye right into the leaves, and this is how it comes up. It comes up very well, just broadcasting right onto a modest amount of organic material. You get a beautiful covering that will come up in the spring. Okay, so a little bit more about the design. As I said, we have 4 meters in between the row centers and 2 meters in between the vines. This could be a little bit tighter, it could be a little bit wider, depending on the pruning style that you could use. And then, as you can see, I'm laying down large pieces of wood. This is cut from this side. I have a few more to go, like this cherry can come out. There's another dying ash here. So those I put down, and like this row, there was a lot of this kind of slash stuff under here, and then just cover with wood chips to make it a little bit smoother and easier to manage and work around. And then so on the outside, the toe of this pile, where this mulch meets the alley, this side has daffodils, iris, and garlic planted there. So they'll come up through the mulch and they'll provide early spring growth. So that's a part of the design. And then in between the trees, there's a seed mix of all the, placenta 1, 2, secondary, climax species. So many different species will come up, and we'll sort of have like a forest regeneration happening in the row that will be pruned. And notice there are no grapes planted yet. So this year, because this soil was so degraded from all the years of tillage, this year is or the coming growing season, 2026, will be largely to allow these poplars and all the developing forest embryo in between the poplars to repair the soil. There are also a lot of bramble seeds in there. So there's thornless blackberry seeds, and I will plant some blackberries just to make sure that they really grow. Blackberries and raspberries, depending on your pH, one or the other are better, but you can use them as a really good bridge along with the poplars and willows to get from annual tilled bacterial dominant soil heading towards a fungal dominant soil that will be beneficial for grapes. So after next year's growth, in the fall, I'll finally plant the grape vines at the base of each of these trees. And there's many ways to do this. I could have had a tree every 4 meters instead of every 2, and then put 2 vines on each tree. There are a lot of different ways to do this, so don't necessarily think that this spacing is the only way, but it's just the way that I chose to do it. Okay, so yeah, I'm laying the woody material out, covering it with the mulch, planting the bulbs and cloves on the outside, planting the trees and the seed mix on the inside, in the row. And that's where I'm at so far. So you can sort of see the stage. This soil has been loosened. We loosened some by hand, and then I loosened some with the excavator because it is fast and easy, and I have it. And it does a phenomenal job to loosen all the way down to the subsoil. It's a little bit overkill, but I mean, this row was just done by hand. The other ones were done with the machine. And yeah, I mean, if you have it sitting there, it's kind of tempting. So, and then the last step will be, it's a little bit too late for me now to seed. I could try to seed rye in the alleys, but probably I'll leave it for now. And then at the very end of winter, in early March, I will loosen the soil in the alleys just with something like this, a little disc, just to really disturb the surface a little bit. And then yeah, that'll be like on a day in March when it's a little bit warm, I'll disturb the soil. I know, or if I do it in early March, I know we'll still have some pretty strong frosts. And so I would disturb the soil on a day when it's not too wet, crumble the top a little bit, put in a lot of probably rye, annual rye, perennial rye, and clovers, and maybe a few other warm season species, maybe switchgrass, something like a warm season bunch grass. And that way I'll have a lot of growth for the whole season in the alley. And if the soil were a little bit more improved, I could think about doing vegetable production or grain production in these alleys. But for now, I'm thinking of it mainly as just healthy growth and biomass. And so what Ernst told me as far as the management would be that in the spring, all the lily and allium family plants will come up first, of course. And after they flower, they're cut and put, later on in the development of the orchard, we would do dormant dormant pruning of the trees and the grapes. And the prunings would be put on the mulch row. And then later in the spring, the alliums and iris and lilies come up. And then after they flower, they get cut and put on top. And then after the grass grows in April, May, then the first cutting would get cut and put on top of that. And that will help develop the immune system of the grapes. Over here, you can see a little remnant where it was too rocky for me to get in. This kind of scene is what this whole side looked like. And all of that material I chipped into just these two piles. And so that area had a lot of woody growth for many, many years. It was all sort of stagnant. The ash are dying, unfortunately. The honeysuckle had already lived through its vigorous portion of its life and was sort of, very, very senescent. So that will all be, it'll all be heading into the soil pretty soon. This mulch is going to break down very quickly. And then, as I said, here we have a maple. Here's another maple, a Norway maple. I'll plant a tree there. I left this oak, and all of those will have their own grapevine planted next to them. And then I'll fill in trees in between to make somewhat kind of rows. I envisioned this side because it's not really easy to till over here. There's big rocks, there's some boulders and ledge and bedrock. So I envisioned this side as a little bit more natural, sort of free form, just working with what's there. And this side sort of starting anew and having rows. I'm sorry this video it's very drab and probably a lot of talking and sort of boring, but we just started the work here and this is what it looks like. And I always forget to document early in the process. So I figured it'd be nice to start with a boring winter video and then next season it may look very different. And I'll be focusing mainly on table grapes here. I'll have a little bit of wine grapes, but mostly I know there's basically no organic table grapes grown in this area. This is the reason why I'm excited about this project, is because we have, there are a lot of grapes grown in my region, but none are organic simply because of diseases. We have a lot of humidity. You can see the humidity hanging in the valley. And it's challenging to grow grapes here, which is why I never had really tried but Aaron said if we use this system and use the pruning system, which I can describe a little bit later on, that we can evade those diseases, or we can build a soil that has a strong enough immune system that those won't be a problem. Just one other note on why I chose this area. First of all, I had it and it was convenient. But second of all, here's a nice pear that I left. So there are a few pears that were growing, and of course grapes. You can't really see, but yeah, here's a grapevine growing up this juniper, and there's an apple with grapes growing on it, cherry with grapes. They're just grapes all over the place. So the grapes were growing here, and I knew that they would do okay. And one thing Aaron said is that this system could be done on pears also, but that this soil here is too degraded to start with something like that, because the pruning, the heavy pruning and the biomass creation and the root growth, the growth pulse of pruning the poplars heavily will help to rebuild the soil. And with pears, if we're just pruning for fruit, we wouldn't get enough biomass, we wouldn't get enough feeding the soil life. As you probably know, poplars, the soft hardwoods, really help build the mycorrhizal community. The arbuscular and the ectomycorrhizal communities both can benefit from the poplars pruning. So just a quick note on the pruning system that I'll be using. The poplar will be probably allowed to grow for 3 or 4 years without much pruning, which means it will get pretty tall. So it could get 15, 20 feet tall, maybe even more. And at some point it would be, I would begin to shape it for pollarding. So I will plan on pollarding somewhere at around 6-7 feet tall, which means that I will allow the grapevine to come up about 6 feet, and then I'll leave some of the poplar's lower branches as trees develop. You can see in this pear here, the apical shoots go very vertical, and the more basal shoots go out to the side. That's just something that happens naturally from the auxin signaling. The lower buds have a wider angle. And so I'll allow that process to happen, and it'll look sort of like this, and a little bit earlier in the stage of the poplar's life than this pear is at. I would cut it, something like here. And so I would have these nice branches coming out to the side. And if I want to accelerate that process, I can use some training for those branches. So in the row, I would leave this poplar, for example, will have a branch coming out this way down the row and one coming out this way down the row. Doesn't have to be exactly in the row, but something like that. And then the grape will come up and rest upon that, just like a normal trellis that you may see with grapes. And then every year in the spring, the poplar will begin to put on shoots coming vertically off of those horizontal branches. The grape vines will initiate their buds and chase those branches up, and the whole thing will become a really wild tangle of branches and grapevine shoots. Most of the grapes will be born close to those initial branches, the cordons. Some grapes will be born higher up. Harvest will be obviously a little bit more challenging than a normal vineyard. And then in the dormant season, all of that, the grapevine and all the new poplar shoots would be pruned back to the main branches, and the grapes would be spur pruned back to those main branches. So you could also cane prune the grapes onto those branches. If you don't know cane and spur pruning, just look up grape, cane, and spur pruning systems. Some varieties prefer one and some varieties prefer the other of grapes. So you just use which one is appropriate or which one you like better. And yeah, so that'll be the system. It'll more or less look like a T, and they'll be going down the line. And then, as I said, in this section over here, it'll be a little bit more, I'll let the grapes grow taller because I want to see if that has any impact on the pests and diseases, and I'll let them cross because the rows will be a little bit less strict over there. Anyway, so that's the overview. If there's any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll see if I can answer them.